All right. The December 4th, 2023 legislative session of Anne Arundel County Council is called to order. Please ensure all phones and electronic devices are set to silent. Ms. Ravian will lead us in the invocation as well as the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we begin this evening's meeting, let us take a moment to pray in the manner which we choose, or simply focus our intentions for the purpose at hand. Let us be guided by wisdom and fairness to address the challenges brought before us. Let us find compassion to help the marginalized. Let us not only speak of justice, but act in just ways. Let us remember that what may appear to divide us will never be greater than those things that unite us. Let us seek to govern in the image of love, as love holds the wisest answers. Amen. And please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we'll now conduct our annual election of chair and vice chair. May I have a motion to suspend the rules and introduce and vote on resolution number 5423 out of order? So moved. Is there a second?
Ledbetter, second.
All right. All right. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The motion to suspend the rules has passed.
Madam Secretary, please read resolution number 5423.
Resolution number 5423. Resolution electing a chair and vice chair of the County Council. Whereas Section 302A of the Anne Arundel County Charter provides that the County Council at its regular meeting or session in December of each year shall elect a chair and vice chair from its membership. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the County Council of Anne Arundel County, Maryland, that it hereby elects Allison Pickard to be chair of the County Council, and be it further resolved that it hereby elects Julie Hummer to be vice chair of the County Council.
All right. See no lights. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 5423.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Resolution number 5423 has been adopted.
Thank you. All right, so at this moment, this is one of those traditional things that we do on a regular basis. So now we will switch chairs and go from there.
I'd like to ask the outgoing chair to join me at the down below so I can present his plaque.
Oh. I used to watch Jerry Walker get those things.
So, sir, as is tradition of this council, you get your, it still works, by the way.
Oh, good. So I can use it. I can use it on this end.
But thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication as we kicked off this term of our term of service. You were a good chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
And well done.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. She said bye.
Well, while we continue to get situated, Madam Secretary, please read the ethics statement.
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The chair of the Ethics Commission has asked that those who wish to testify in any form review the general information on lobbying sheet located on the ethics website under forms and publications. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, please contact the Ethics Commission at 410-222-4413.
Thank you. We will now open our invitation to audience. This is an opportunity to speak briefly on any subject not included in the printed agenda. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
And it's my understanding that for invitation to audience, we have no one signed up ahead of time. Is that correct? If there's anyone here who wishes to speak, please come up to the table, state your name and address and your topic before making your remarks. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. I will remind everybody this is specifically for items not on tonight's agenda. Seeing no movement, the invitation to audience is now closed. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda tonight? Seeing none. May I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Madam Secretary, please read the minutes of the November 2023 meeting.
Minutes of November 20th, 2023. The County Council meeting was called to order by Chair Smith at 6:05 p.m. It was opened with the invocation given by Ms. Fiedler and was followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The meeting was held in the County Council chambers in Annapolis, Maryland.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 2023?
Motion to adopt.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The minutes of November 2023 stand approved as read. Madam Secretary, please read the titles of any bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill number 9023, an ordinance concerning approval of private disposition of certain improved county-owned property being part of Brooklyn Heights Park in Baltimore, Maryland. Bill number 9123, an ordinance concerning finance, taxation, and budget, real property taxes, tax credits, public safety officer, property tax credit. Bill number 9223, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, zoning, small business districts.
Madam
Secretary, can you add me as a co-sponsor on 91?
So noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, please read the titles of the resolutions to be introduced this evening.
Resolution number 5523, resolution approving the nomination of members to the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission.
Thank you. May I get a motion to suspend the rules to change the order of the agenda to move Bill number 80-23 and resolution numbers 4823, 5223, and 5523 to the top of the agenda?
So moved. Rodvian, second.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on the motion to change the order of the agenda.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The motion to change the order has been passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 80-23.
Bill number 8023, an ordinance concerning Anne Arundel County 10-year solid waste management plan 2024 to 2033.
Thank you. This is an administration bill. Welcome to the table. You may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table, I have Rhodey Holdhouse from the Department of Public Works and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. This bill was discussed previously at the work session. and at the last council meeting where we had an administration amendment. Just briefly to recap, state law requires the county's solid waste management plan be updated every 10 years and reviewed every 3 years. Bill 8023 repeals the 2013 plan and adopts the county's 10-year solid waste plan to cover 2024 through 2033. We're happy to answer any questions and would urge your favorable vote on this tonight.
Do we have any questions from my colleagues? No. We will now open the public hearing on Bill number 80-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I don't believe anyone is signed up. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Please come up to the table and have a seat. When it's your turn, state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. Seeing no movement, the public hearing on Bill number 80-23 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 80-23.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm so sorry. I didn't correct my statement. We did receive one submission of testimony that came through our online testimony tool. Everyone here got a copy via email, and the summary is posted online.
Oh, great, thanks.
My apologies for that. I will now read the title. Bill number 8023, an ordinance concerning Anne Arundel County 10-year solid waste management plan 2024 to 2033.
Is there any final discussion? Mr. Volke.
I just want to add, I thank you for correcting that, Ms. Corby. And Mr. Holdhouse, I'm going to forward you this email from this person. I don't think it's so much a substantive issue on the bill as some questions and concerns they had about the facility, because I think they live nearby. So with that, I'm going to forward that to you, and then you can take a look at it. But I just wanted to address that, make sure you knew about it, it was coming, that's where it comes from. And I also want that person, wherever they are at home, to be able to know that we did look at it and we did review it. So
Certainly,
just to be
thank
clear. Thank you.
Is there any final discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 80-23.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer. Aye. Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Radvian. Aye. Ms. Ledbetter. Aye. Mr. Smith. Aye. And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Bill number 8023 has passed.
Thank you, folks.
Madam Secretary, when you're ready, please read the title of resolution number 48-23.
Resolution number 4823, resolution approving the determination of certain improved county-owned property known as a portion of Magathy Bridge Road adjacent to the Early Heights Volunteer Fire Company in Severna Park, Maryland as surplus property.
This is an administration resolution. You may go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table is Lori Blair Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. This resolution was discussed at the last work session as well. This property is located in Severna Park. It's adjacent to the Early Heights Volunteer Fire Company. They have requested, they're interested rather in obtaining the parcel for on Magathy Bridge Road for additional parking. Council's been provided a map of the area as part of the exhibits with this resolution, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions from my colleagues, we'll now open the public hearing on resolution 48-23. Did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything, Madam Chair.
Okay. I don't believe we have anybody signed up ahead of time. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak on resolution 48-23, please come to the table and have a seat. Seeing no movement in the audience, we'll close the public hearing on resolution number 48-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution 48-23.
Resolution number 4823, resolution approving the determination of certain improved county-owned property known as a portion of Magathy Bridge Road adjacent to the Early Heights Volunteer Fire Company in Severna Park, Maryland as surplus property.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on behalf of my colleague from District 5 who's not yet joined us, I wanted to just put out there for everybody's information. We had a meeting last Monday at Early Heights Fire Department with some community members from the communities that abut the area where Early Heights Fire Department is located. And we actually discussed this in addition to some other things. And so the community was apprised of what this actually entails. And just for everyone's edification, this is a piece of property that actually has parking currently, and they use it for parking at the firehouse, but it's county-owned property. So this is just giving property that already looks like it is owned by the fire department to the fire company. So they will own that. And given that my district is on the other side of Magathy Bridge, I appreciated the chance to speak on this. Thank you.
Is there any final discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 48-23.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Resolution number 4823 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution number 53-23.
Resolution number 5223, resolution confirming a nomination to the Board of Trustees of the Public Library Association of Annapolis in Anne Arundel County, Incorporated.
This is an administration resolution. Ms. Schultz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Kaylee Schultz from the County Executive's Office. Resolution 5223 confirms the nomination of Dylan Baylor to the board, and he right now serves as the Director of Legislative and Constituent Services for the Maryland Department of Natural Resources and as a resident of District 6. I do know that the Library Board is excited to welcome him, providing this, I'm losing words tonight, favorable vote. Thank you so much.
Is there any discussion? You know, I think I read that as 5323. So I want to, I think I said it a bit in the beginning. So it was 5223. But we don't have public testimony. We don't have a public hearing on, oh, we do. Okay. Okay, thank you. We will now open the public hearing on resolution number 52-23. Seeing no movement, we'll now close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive any testimony from the public on resolution number 5223.
Great. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 5223. It's going to be the death of me too.
Earlier today, I think we did refer to it as 5323, so we might have started,
okay.
we might have begun a little bit of confusion there. Resolution number 5223, resolution confirming a nomination to the Board of Trustees of the Public Library Association of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, Incorporated.
Ms. Radvian.
Thank you. As Mr. Baylor is a resident of District 6, I wanted to give him a shout out. He's a very, very hardworking individual and dedicated public servant. So I think this will be a great fit for him. It'll be great for the library board to bring him on board. And I hope everyone supports.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution 52-23.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Resolution number 5223 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 55-23.
Resolution number 5523, resolution approving the nomination of members to the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission.
Ms. Schultz, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let's try this again. Kaylee Schultz from the County Executive's Office. Resolution 5523 appoints Renee Price Newman, who is a resident of District 1, to serve on the Human Relations Commission. It also reappoints Mark Apter and Mary Dodoni, which currently serve as County Executive nominations, and also reappoints Eugene Peterson, a member from District 4, to be reappointed to the Human Relations Commission. I would like to thank Councilman Smith and Councilwoman Hummer for their recommendations, and I hope you have a favorable outcome on this resolution.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony regarding this resolution?
No, Madam Chair, we did not.
We'll now open the public hearing on resolution number 5523. I don't believe we have anybody signed up in advance. Scanning the audience. Seeing no movement, we'll close the public hearing on resolution number 55-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 55-23.
Resolution number 5523, resolution approving the nomination of members to the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission.
Is there any final discussion from my colleagues? Seeing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution number 5523.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Resolution number 5523 has been adopted.
You staying? Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 78-23.
Bill number 7823, an ordinance concerning finance, taxation, and budget subdivision and development zoning, Essential Worker Housing Access Act of 2023.
This is an administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration, standing in for Pete Barron, who couldn't be here today. With me at the table is Kaylee Schultz, Aaron Karpowitz, Jenny Jarkowski, Lori Blair Klossmeyer, and Lynn Miller. We've discussed this bill a lot. I'm sure we're going to continue to discuss it. We have a couple of amendments that we'll be discussing, so I'll reserve comment on those until the appropriate time. I would just reiterate that the administration feels this is a very important bill, a very important policy to move forward to ensure that housing affordability and access for Anne Arundel County remains achievable. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions or continue to public testimony.
Is there any discussion at this time from my colleagues? Seeing none, we'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 7823. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There were 3 submissions through our online testimony tool. Everyone got an email and a summary. It's posted online, and that will all be added to the record.
Thank you. We will now hear from individuals who signed up ahead of time. Will the following persons please come up to the table, take a seat, and state your name, address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. If you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. You will see a timer and it will go off. The first speaker, or I just have one speaker, is that correct? Is Dr. Linda Bonner.
And congratulations to Councilman Pickard and Hummer on your elections. But excuse me, I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to ACT to make a comment on this bill. And I will be submitting some additional comments online as well. As we know, at the November 20th hearing, we heard a lot of different testimony, particularly from individuals being affected by the impact of the housing. I do need to go on record as saying that ACT is disappointed in many of the changes that were made to the bill that evening, and we would urge you to reconsider reversing some of the actions, particularly with respect to the buyout fee. We all know that in the beginning we knew this was going to be a long haul and that it would be important for us all to take bold actions as part of the landscape to make changes in this housing crisis in the county. And also, we heard you clearly say that you would fight for us to help get affordable housing in this county. We were disappointed by some of the compromises and most significantly allowing the buyout of single-family homes. Whether or not it reduces the numbers, the result of this action is that it does send a message to our residents that there still exists in our neighborhoods in this county that you're not welcome if you don't make a certain amount of money or you come from a different culture. It's also deeply disturbing because we have so much work to do to overcome the legacy of a discriminatory, exclusionary housing practice. ACT is very willing to be a partner in pursuing the steps needed to remove exclusionary housing, but we all need to be partners in this. We'd like to reinforce our position on several points. We strongly support initiating a major evaluation of the county's zoning process for land use in the planning areas and how decisions are made to accommodate creative housing, particularly for affordable units. An important part of this zoning reform is establishing legislation enabling missing middle housing to occur. And we thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bonner. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, please come up to the table and have a seat. When it's your turn, state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. We'll start with you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Council Chair Pickard and council members. I'm still appreciating your acknowledgement from our last meeting, and thank you very much. But on behalf of the Growth Action Network, as chair, we think your amendments at that same meeting last week to Bill 7823 have removed the affordable from affordable housing. My colleague, Kate Fox, is going to talk about the R5 zoning. I'm going to talk about the fee. To reduce the fee from 3 to 1% ridiculously reduces the contribution to the housing fund. If that 1% fee remains in place, a community of 20 new single-family homes in the $1 million range that developers crave will now have no affordably priced housing and will generate only $200,000 for the housing fund. The original 3% fee would have generated $600,000 from that same development, which just happens to be the price of 2 moderately priced units. The 3% was the right number then, it's the right number now. We believe the council should amend the bill back to 3% if no affordable housing is to be built. And finally, on the implementation date, Mr. Smith's argument that the bill should be implemented on the date it's signed was the right one. Deferring this until the 1st of July allows a 6-month window for developers to sneak in anything they want to. If the county's not ready to implement on July 1st, then defer applications, accepting applications until July 1st, but implement the bill on the date it's signed. Finally, we have a question for the sponsor to explain the intent and the math behind Amendment 18 when you get there. We're having a hard time figuring out kind of what the intent is and what you're hoping to do with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, I can't hear that buzzer. Did it not go off? Or did Mr. Minahan meet his 2 minutes?
He did.
Mr. Minahan, I think
It's so unusual. It never happens.
I think Mr. Minahan was given an award for that, too.
Oh, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. We do have a lot of business to attend to tonight. Thank you. Ms. Fox?
Thank you. I'm Kate Fox. I'm chair of the Legislative Committee of Growth Action Network, as you probably all know by now. I'm here to talk to you about the amendment passed on this bill that was devastating to the strength of the bill in our view. It exempted single-family housing from the requirements for including MPDUs in zoning densities from RA to R5. We can understand exempting development of detached housing in RA through R2, but R5 zoning is a sweet spot for affordable detached single-family housing for which there is a demand. The facts about housing allowed in R5 in the code are both single-family detached and adult independent dwelling units are permitted, where duplex or semi-detached and townhouses are conditional. So it's easier to get permitted to build a single-family detached house or an adult independent dwelling unit than it is a duplex or semi-detached or a townhouse. But the real issue is that the bulk densities in R5 make it so that developers can't achieve 5 houses per acre in R5 zoning because of the roads and setbacks and stormwater requirements and maximum lot coverage, et cetera, in the code. What we're asking you to do is please amend the bill back to remove the exemption for single-family detached dwellings in R5 and consider instead changing bulk density rules if a developer creates MPDUs in a R5 zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Gundry, District 6, Parkside Preserve. I was compelled to continue to come back here because this is such an important bill. And that was gutted the last time we were here in the previous meeting. To take the fee from 3% to 1% is pitiful, especially from people who promised us that they cared about this issue. Also, I wanted to speak about cutting down the single-family homes portion of the MPDUs. The developer in Parkside Preserve specifically negotiated with the city to make all the MPDUs in the townhome section because of cost. Because the rate of the MPDUs was based on the total number, not just the townhome portion, we had 19 MPDU homes instead of 13 if they hadn't counted the single-family 44 homes that are being listed at $1.3 million. As the Christmas season comes into full swing, don't allow your hearts to grow 2 sizes too small.
Thank you.
Am I on?
Can I just stop for a minute? This is a business meeting, so we're going to participate for the next year as a business meeting. It's not a rally. We're now inside and we've got business to do. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Amy Leahy, and I'm Vice President for Public Affairs for the Greater Severna Park Council, which is an umbrella organization of about 60 communities in Severna Park. So I thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Tonight, I'm here to express our concerns about 7823, the Essential Worker Housing Access Act of 2023. In addition to everything that's already been said, our main concern that I want to address right now is that this original bill was proposed by the county executive to make living in Anne Arundel County more affordable for essential workers, those identified as police, fire, teachers, county employees, nurses, etc., by making it more desirable for developers to include moderately priced housing units in their new developments. However, the last set of amendments passed by the council have severely weakened the bill and seems to completely counter the intent by opening the essential worker field to those who do not even work in Anne Arundel County. That's just egregious. That completely undermines the intent of this bill. As the GAN chair recently pointed out in his latest correspondence, not only is the focus on county essential workers stripped from the bill, but a grandfathering amendment was also passed that would exclude any developments already in the pipeline from complying with this deadline. If I'm correct on that, I could be wrong. It's a difficult bill to figure out. So that's only a couple of our concerns. But I would like to admit that I agree with Councilwoman Pickard. I'm sure she never thought she'd hear me say that this is a very complex initiative and the bill needs a lot more work after tonight. We ask that this council retract these amendments and preserve the original intent and integrity of the bill. Thank you.
Good evening. Before I begin, I thought I had 3 minutes. When I came in, I heard I had 2. So I've been feverishly editing, and now I'm going to be speed reading. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Okay.
All right. Good evening. My name is Stephen Tillett. I'm the co-chair of ACT and pastor of Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church. Some in our community have suggested that we are rushing with this latest attempt to address the inequity of access to home ownership and housing. For those who've waited years and even decades for a fair opportunity, I would submit that things have hardly been rushed. I would like to reference and give you some assigned reading, if you're willing, this book, The Color of Law, by Richard Rothstein, that really deals with a lot of the history and facts dealing with housing in the United States of America. While the terms food insecurity and housing insecurity came into use at the height of the pandemic, they were hardly new phenomena in our country, our county, or our state. Scholars supporting the work of the Poor People's Campaign have determined that there are 140 million poor and low-wealth Americans, low wealth meaning that a $500 to $1,000 emergency could push them into poverty. Of those, 66 million are white, that's 1/3 of white people, 26 million are black, that's 6 out of every 10 black people. 45% are women, 42% are men, 64% of Latinos, none of whom can afford a $500 to $1,000 emergency without it potentially driving them farther into poverty. And shamefully, 52% of children are poor and low wealth. 43% of the entire country is poor and low wealth, largely because of policy. There's not a county in this country where you can work a minimum wage job of $7.25 an hour and afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment. Ironically, one of the asks of the 1963 March on Washington was for a minimum wage of $2, which today would be tantamount to $15. In conclusion, we do not have any more time to delay, and we can do better than a watered-down bill that is more concerned about developers who will make money no matter how this bill turns out than our fellow county residents who face financial realities foreign to many of us and who need access to home ownership now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you. Kevin Haynes, 303 Sycamore Road, Severna Park. I'm the Anne Arundel County chair the chair of the Anne Arundel County chapter of the Maryland Building Industry Association, here tonight testifying on behalf of MBIA. Just want to reiterate a few thoughts, comments on this bill, going back to even to the first night of testimony. I still feel as though, again, sitting at this table, we're not so far off on this issue. Everyone at this table desires more housing in this county, and we need it. We know our building permits residentially are down to historic lows. Affordability is hard to come by, no matter how you categorize that. And our zoning really is the issue, our underlying zoning. Mr. Minahan noted, $1 million mansions being the prize in this county for developers. The reality is that our zoning, the vast majority of what's available out there, that's what you can build. That's what makes sense. That's what you can put on a 40,000 square foot lot and sell it. So I think if we are here to talk about housing, here to talk about how to produce more housing, more affordable housing, we need to look at our zoning. Look at how we create smaller units. Look at how we create those more affordable units and produce more housing. Because if we are able to produce it and more of it, we will get a lower price for it. So I would charge this council with looking into that. Let's work on zoning. Let's do the hard work, because it's going to be a heavy lift, and we all know it. And everyone at this table will probably be here when we have that conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all are dismissed. Is there anyone else looking to testify? Ma'am, state your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Wanda Higgs, Pasadena, Maryland, and I just want to address some of the comments I just heard about zoning, because this county has really expanded a lot, and I don't feel like the zoning in the permits office is protecting the current residents enough, so that the idea that zoning is the problem doesn't touch me. It doesn't ring true to me. And I sell houses here. So I think that really the environmental impact of everything that everyone's talking about needs to be considered. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
The public hearing on Bill number 7823 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 78-23.
Bill number 7823, an ordinance concerning finance, taxation, and budget, subdivision and development, zoning, Essential Worker Housing Access Act of 2023.
We do have amendments this evening on Bill 7823. Madam Secretary, will you please read amendment number 18?
Amendment number 18. This amendment modifies the contribution in lieu for each rental moderately priced dwelling unit to 5% of the average annual rent for market rental units.
Mr. Hunt, this is a administration amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As was said, this amendment clarifies the contribution for the fee in lieu for each rental moderately priced dwelling unit to 5% of the average annual rental. For market rental units, it brings it in line with the fee in lieu for home ownership rent units that the council passed.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved. Hummer.
there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Does anyone at the table want to elaborate on amendment number 19? 18? Ms. Rodvian?
I would like someone at the table to elaborate on amendment number 18. If you could give us a little bit more specific, maybe show us an example, or if you could talk us through an example mathematically how this works out.
Erin Karpowitz, Arundel Community Development Services. And so how this would work, Councilwoman Rodvian, is that you would take the moderately priced dwelling units that would otherwise be required, and you would take the number of those moderately priced rental units that would otherwise be required and multiply that by the average rent for the unit type. And we did average because if you're looking at the market rate units, there could be a different rental rate for each of those market rate rental units depending on when they came online or the current renters started to rent. And this is an annual calculation that the administrator, most likely ACDS, would need to collect each year. And so we would collect that based on the average. So you'd multiply, so let's say that there was the average rent for a 3-bedroom, and the average rent for a 3-bedroom unit would be $3,000. You would take that $3,000 times the number of moderately priced dwelling units that otherwise would be required, which in most cases is not going to exceed 3 units because the fee in lieu for rental units only applies to developments that are 19 units and below. So you would take that times 3 units, and you would calculate that as the amount of dollars, and then take 5% of that rent amount and apply that each year.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just really my bottom line question, is this increase the fee in lieu or decrease the fee in lieu based on the calculations?
It depends on what the market rate is, but it probably decreases it. And in talking with different providers in the community for rental units, it makes it more in line with the present value of what the fee in lieu would be for the home ownership rates. So if you look at the present value for home ownership fee in lieus, that's a one-time collection that we collect up front. On the other hand, for the rental, the way it was included in the law is it was being collected every single year for 40 years, and so it was a pretty substantial dollar amount over the 40 years in some cases, in some examples.
So is this collected annually, or is this?
Yes, this would be collected annually.
So presumably earlier on in the 40-year window, you might be under, but in the long run, well, no, because the market would all move up together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in most cases it's going to, frankly, be less of a fee in lieu then.
And I'm just curious, the only justification for this is to bring it in line with what we did, bringing the single family from 3% down to 1%? Is that what I'm correctly understanding?
Well, it was also to clarify in terms of the amount that you're calculating it based upon. So I think before there was a lot of question about what the difference in rents was going to be, because when people come in and occupy, or when their rent is established, it was pretty variable, and there was a lot of confusion around that.
But you could have clarified without bringing it down to 5%. You could have left it at 10 or 15% to keep it a little bit more in line with what the council had previously passed. I guess, did you guys consider? I don't know if you can talk about that part of your discussion.
Yeah, I think there was a discussion around making it at least in line with what was passed by the council in the last amendment, last council session.
I appreciate the clarification, but I feel like, again, we're...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was to bring it in line with the home ownership fee in lieu.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Get used to that. I'm sure it's in the bill somewhere, and I recollect talking about it at the work session, but scrolling, if you guys could help me. The fee in lieus that are collected are used for, if you could fill in that blank,
The fee and lieu go to the housing trust, the Affordable Housing Trust, and so we're utilizing those as we presented, as ACDS presented during our budget presentations in the spring of 2023. We're utilizing it for a number of activities. The majority of activities are to spur affordable rental development and provide that subsidy in exchange for income restricted units. And then we're also doing a lot of work on homeownership development. So we have our, we have a development that we're creating that's going to create affordable home ownership units, as well as first-time home buyer down payment closing cost. We are providing that for households that are earning up to 100% of area median income. So that's a demand side subsidy. And then continuing a number of the affordable housing programs that we were able to undertake during COVID because of the influx of COVID-related funding.
Madam Chair, may I ask a follow-up? So reducing the fee in lieu will reduce the funds in that trust fund that you have to work with?
It could.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Why is the admin bringing a bill to weaken the bill that the admin brought down to begin with?
That's an excellent question, Councilman Volke. I wouldn't characterize it as weakening it.
Okay.
We had always intended that the fee in lieu for rentals would be in line with the fee in lieu for ownership. And so the way it was written, there had been some questions from different council members about how it was calculated, and I know that you received probably some emails from constituents who interpreted it differently, so we reviewed this as clarifying and being in line with the home ownership fee in lieu.
Can I ask a follow-up?
You may.
Thank you. So the admin brought down 3% as the fee. This council, by a 4-3 vote on the homeownership piece, it was 1%. You're right. And then you brought 3%. And then this council again took it back down to 1%. So now you're making this consistent with the 1%. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to say, but so I thought we wanted rental to be mandatory.
So rental is mandatory for unit or developments that are 20 units and above. And that's always been the case in the original bill since it was amended.
And this is just for the 10 to 19 rental units?
Correct, yes. And I frankly, I don't think that this is really going to come up much because I don't think there are really going to be any rental developments that are between 10 and 20.
I was actually going to ask, do we know how many developments?
I don't think that there are going to be any. Based on the affordable housing developers and market rate developers that I've talked to, I don't think it's economically feasible to develop market rate units or rental units at that size. There might be some infill that occurs in smaller boutique things, but I really don't think it's going to be an issue.
All right, so just to be clear, 1 to 9, there's no inclusion into this program. They're exempt.
Correct.
10 to 19 for rental specifically. This is that fee that allows them to exempt out of it. And then 20 and up is mandatory for rental. And the bulk of the projects in the past, when it came to rental units, are more than 19.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and this amendment does not affect any
Those,
of,
right?
of
Those are mandatory, right?
Yes, and,
Yeah, I was
and
trying
that
to think.
hasn't changed since the last meeting as well.
What was the last rental community that's being built? The one here in Annapolis, isn't that rental? Off of
So I'm not as familiar with the market rate rental communities that are being constructed, but I can elaborate on the affordable communities.
Well, I was going to ask. I think it's more than 19 in that building.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All the projects that I'm familiar with are, we talk to developers all the time, and they say they can't make things work really below 30 units.
Check.
Because of the the property management costs.
Got it. Sounds like. Thank you.
Thank you. So this amendment is, I had a hand in this amendment, so I'm happy to speak to it a little bit for my colleagues. In working with the actual way the calculation is currently drafted, there was a large amount of discrepancy on how that calculation actually would function, to the tune that in one calculation, a 19-unit rental community, the fee in lieu was $2 million. So bringing clarity to both the calculation and then right-sizing the fee in lieu for these, as we say, probably scarcely built 10 to 19 unit rental was just that. It was right-sizing it with the intent of the original fee in lieu concept, in my opinion. Obviously, there's a percentage that we can go up and down on, but I think we can all agree that a $2 million fee in lieu is ridiculous. Is there any further discussion on amendment number 18? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 18.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Nay.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Nay.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 18 has been defeated.
Okay. This is going great. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 19.
Amendment number 19. This amendment requires that in order for a household to purchase or rent a moderately priced dwelling unit, a member of the household must be a resident of the county or employed in the county or have accepted an offer of employment at a location in the county.
This is Ms. Rodvian's amendment. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. So as several people have pointed out, including even in the newspaper, an amendment that we brought at our last meeting unintentionally went much broader than we wanted. The idea of that amendment, the focus originally on that amendment was to bring the category of essential workers from simply AACPS and county employees to all different kinds of workers. We started naming them, and once you realized one type of essential worker, then you realized, oh, well, we should include this group, we should include this group, we should include this group. And it gets very hard to define who is essential and not essential. And I think probably every worker in the county is essential to someone. So that was the purpose of that. But we unintentionally made the geography of who was eligible to apply much broader than we intended. So this brings it back, or at least that was my belief. And this brings it back to folks that are either already living in the county or have a intended connection to the county because they have received and accepted employment at a location in the county. So with that, I move amendment number 19.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does the administration have any comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to thank the sponsor of the amendment for sharing it with us ahead of time. We believe this is a good amendment. It, recognizes the intent of this bill to make housing more affordable for our residents and our employers here in Anne Arundel County. We would encourage the council to pass this amendment.
Are there any comments? Ms. Rodvian, are you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Smith?
Madam Chair, I do have one. And maybe this is for the sponsor or someone at the table. So if I get ownership, that is not a concern for me. On the rental side, obviously, to even qualify, one of the conditions is to be a county employee or someone employed in the county. When they go to renew that rental lease, let's say they move or they start working outside of the county, how does that impact them? Does that make sense? So if I'm working at Anne Arundel County School, I get into a rental unit specifically, not ownership, because you're going to be in that for like 10, 20 years, unless you get divorced. But that's a whole nother story. Well, I don't know. He said tell us more. So in that instance, if you're renting and then you're working for the school system, but now Prince George's County hires you. So when you go to renew the lease, are you not meeting the condition of that
Well, you would already, oh, I'm sorry, Council.
No, go ahead.
So you would already meet the intent of the law, which is also to have current residents of Anne Arundel County and City of
Oh,
Nashville.
so at that point, you're a current resident. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from my colleagues? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 19.
Mr. Volkey? Aye. Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler? Aye. Ms. Radvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 19 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, are those the only amendments tonight for Bill 7823?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's all we had.
Thank you.
I think we're moving on to 81. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you. Once again, I'm shuffling papers. I will be organized by meeting number 2. Where are we? Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 81-23.
Bill number 8123, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, supplementary appropriations grant, special revenue fund, opioid abatement special revenue fund.
This is an administration bill. Ms. Dyer, you have the floor.
Thank you and good evening. Hannah Dyer, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. So this bill was amended at the last council meeting and also discussed at the work session before that. As amended, it appropriates just over $2.3 million in new grant awards to 9 departments and $1.6 million from the opioid abatement fund. And we have our team representatives from the budget office, the health department, and law, and we can answer any additional questions that you all have.
Are there any questions from my colleagues at this time? Seeing none, we'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 81-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony from the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
I don't believe we have any speakers signed up in advance. Is there anyone in the audience at this time that wants to speak on Bill number 81-23? Seeing no movement, I will close the public hearing on Bill number 81-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 81-23.
Bill number 8123, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, supplementary appropriations, grant special revenue fund, opioid abatement special revenue fund.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, my apologies.
It's all right. You just have to look at this side.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just to be clear, Mr. Smith does this sometimes. For the people following along at home, we don't spend $4 million and not have done any due diligence on this. So we have had multiple hearings and work sessions about this. We all know what the spending is in this bill. So I just want to say that for those following along. And I'm especially excited for the sprinklers and recovery residences, which you all have worked with me and others on the council to put in. So thank you. So with that, I look forward to supporting this.
Thank you, Mr. Volkey. Madam Chair, please call the, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 81-23.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Radvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 8123 has been passed.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 83-23.
Bill number 8323, an ordinance concerning zoning, requirements for parking and conditional uses, housing for the elderly of moderate means, and workforce housing.
Thank you. This is actually my bill, so I will take a moment to discuss the tenets of this bill. It has been amended and is ready for a vote today. Back in 2019, we passed the Workforce Housing Bill 54-19 and the Elderly of Moderate Means Bill 97-19. Now that a few years have passed, we know that both of these bills have been successful in supporting this type of housing. Bill 83-23 proposes shifts for our more intense zoning districts, i.e. R15, commercial and industrial, to modified road classification and gross area coverage requirements to allow greater flexibility in finding suitable sites for these projects. I'm thrilled with the work that's been done on this bill to date. I urge my colleagues to support. Does the admin have anything to say at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. With me at the table are Lynn Miller from the Office of Planning and Zoning and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. I appreciate the sponsors' work with the administration on this to address concerns about parking. We have no other comments. We would encourage the council to pass this bill tonight. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 83-23. Madam Secretary, have we had any online testimony?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
Thank you. We don't have anyone signed up to speak on Bill 83-23. If there is someone here in the audience wanting to testify, you may come forward at this time. Please state your name and address for the record, and you are reminded that you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Quiet Water Cove, Annapolis, Maryland. I am also co-chair of the ACT Housing Team. And Councilman Pickard, we would like to congratulate you on this amendment to the workforce housing. We're fans of the workforce housing, and we believe that anything that expedites and make the workforce housing legislation better so that we can get more affordable housing, the better it'll be. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further movement, I'll close the public hearing on Bill 83-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 83-23.
Bill number 8323, an ordinance concerning zoning, requirements for parking and conditional uses, housing for the elderly of moderate means, and workforce housing.
Is there any final discussion from my colleagues? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you. This is probably a question for you. Can you just clarify? I mean, I've gone through the bill, but can you clarify, does this actually increase or decrease the number of parking spaces that would be required for the type of housing addressed here? Or is it just is it simply specifying something that wasn't there?
It actually decreases the minimum requirement for just slightly for workforce housing.
Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion. Oh, Ms. Ledbetter.
Sorry, a little late on my light. I had a question for you. Sorry, I want to make sure I read it properly. Too many windows. It mentions in the bill, in an R5 or R10 zoning district, vehicular access shall be located on a collector or higher classification road. Are those the only 2 zoning districts that will then have conditions for vehicular traffic?
Yes, that is part of the original legislation, and that remains the same. What is being changed in this bill is if you are already in a more intensive zoning district, you do not have to be on a high classification road. But most industrial or commercial or R15, R22 property is already located on probably a collector road, most likely.
Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
I have a quick clarifying question. So if I am a development that is not for elderly of moderate means or workforce, and I'm looking at R15 and R22, I would be still at the 65% of the gross area of the lot or lot coverage?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I'll let Ms. Miller discuss.
That is correct. This only applies, the conditional use requirements only apply in this bill to housing for elderly, moderate means, or workforce housing.
Thank you. That's the way that I read it and understood it. And I think as far as incentives are concerned, this will work. I think the struggle for me, even though the 5th District doesn't have a significant, if any, R15 or R22 undeveloped, is it's a big jump for me from 65% to 80%. So thank you.
Okay. Madam Secretary, please. Oh, gosh, excuse me. Ms. Rodvian.
Sorry to ip.
You can just say Madam Chair. It's okay.
Yeah, that's probably what I should have done, but ip came out first. Anyway, I actually would like to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill. I think one of the things that I heard, you guys may know that a number of our counterparts on the Annapolis City Council recently traveled to the Netherlands and looked at how some of their cities are set out there. And one of the things that they observed is that there's significantly less parking. But what that does is it makes it, makes the neighborhoods built more compact, more sort of human scaled. And, one of the major means of transportation in their cities is bicycle. And as a cyclist, I love that. And I would love to, obviously, there's so many advantages, health, environment. So I think, little steps towards that. And so I really just want to say thank you for bringing this bill.
Great. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 83-23.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
5 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. Bill number 8323 has been passed.
Wow. Bill number 84-23. Madam Secretary, please read the bill number 84-23.
Bill number 8423, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, zoning, boards, commissions, and similar bodies, finance, taxation, and budget, public works, Odenton Town Center master plan.
This is an administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table are Christina Pompa and Mark Wildonger from the Office of Planning and Zoning, as well as Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. This bill was also discussed at the work session, and we had a presentation you may recall as well. But just to refresh everyone's memory, this is an update to the 2016 Odenton Town Center master plan, which falls entirely within Councilmember Hummer's district. Planning for the Odenton Town Center started in the county in 1972, but it wasn't until 1995 that the council adopted the Odenton Town Center Growth Management Area. A number of updates have occurred to the plan since 1995, the most recent being in 2016. Previous versions of the master plan contained both development requirements and design standards. With this latest update, legal language is moving to Articles 17 and 18 in the county code, while design standards will remain in the master plan. A list of key changes and updates to this master plan can be found on page 13 in the draft plan. We do have one administration amendment before you that we'll discuss at the appropriate time, but for now I'd like to turn it over to the rest of my panel if they have any additional comments, or we'll be happy to take questions.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues at this time? All right, we'll now open the public hearing on bill number 84-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There was one submission. Everybody here got an email. It's included in the summary that's posted online. It will be added to the meeting record.
I don't believe we have any speakers signed up in advance. Is there anyone in the audience wanting to come forward to testify on bill number 84-23? You guys are going to have to move. Oh, you do? Oh, I didn't see. My apologies. My apologies if you signed up in advance. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes. Sir, go ahead.
It's on. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've never been here before. Long time listener, first time caller, you know how it works. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, though, and congratulations on your change of chairmanship. It's pretty awesome to watch, so thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Jason Schwer. I'm the chair of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee, and so I'm the one who sent you a nice long letter as part of the submission. I'm not going to recap those comments just because I figure you can read them. But what I want to do is just reiterate that the OTCAC respectfully encourages the adoption of this master plan update. A great deal of time and energy was spent with the public, with the Odenton community, with our developer compatriots, with the county to develop what you saw. And we're actually very, very pleased with the outcome. Like if you look at the old master plan compared to this new one, it is awesome. Like the change, the work that went into this, I cannot tell you how happy we are with that with that quality. So again, this is just a culmination of a very long effort. It took us multiple years to get here, and we're very excited to see this plan finally come to fruition and actually get updated. It accounts for all of the feedback that we got from the public, from developers, from basically anybody who would submit it. We really tried hard to incorporate all of this. And again, I'll keep this brief, but thank you for the time to speak to you, and we definitely encourage the adoption of the update.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Title.
For the record, my name is Stuart Title, 8373 Piney Orchard Parkway, Odenton, the 4th District. And distinguished council members, as a developer representative member of the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee for the past 3 years, I've been honored to serve along with my other committee members and county representatives with long-range planning. During the time spent 2 years in evening meetings discussing, debating, and eventually recommending on how to improve Odenton Town Center vision plan, but also code changes that are far more critical implications that need to be carefully examined and not just pushed through for approval by this council. For the record, I was the only dissenting member of the committee which put forth a recommendation of the vision plan and Odenton Town Center Code being revised and placed in Articles 17 and 18 of the Anne Arundel County Code. Nonetheless, I worked tirelessly with my committee members to do what we thought was best for the committee at large. In addition to my current time with the committee, I'd spent 20 years, to be exact, on a committee within the West County Chamber that gave feedback on county recommendations for the foundation of the original plan going back to 1995. I'm not sure anyone else was around when I started that. I've also been and am involved in numerous Odenton Town Center development projects, so I've walked the walk, so to speak, and been through, up, and against the plan. But the reason for my dissent was to draw attention to the fact that the development community, which I represent in some respects, has many issues with the bill and requirements within the vision plan, as well as changes to items being placed in Articles 17 and 18 of the county code. And I'm asking this county council to carefully consider these documents within the bill, along with listening, just not hearing, what the development community's concerns and recommendations are. Many of the projects reviewed by the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee have not been built as of yet.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Can
I submit this?
May I ask him a quick question? Just while he's here.
Sure.
Sure.
Are you for or against this bill? I didn't hear you say that.
Didn't have a chance.
Right, but I don't want to go into all of it. Are you for or against it?
In generality, I'm for it.
Okay.
Okay, I just think that there's some things that need to be considered, that's all.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll close the public hearing at this time on Bill 84-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 84-23.
Bill number 8423, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, zoning, boards, commissions, and similar bodies, finance, taxation, and budget, public works, Odenton Town Center master plan.
Before we move on to the First Amendment, is there any discussion at this time?
I just want to thank Mr. Schwer and Mr. Title for coming out tonight. They have both been invaluable voices for a very long time in getting this project where it is. And there is an amendment tonight. There will be a couple more coming at the next meeting, and we are still working to address some of the issues. But overall, the feedback on this has been very positive, and we're very grateful for all the public input. And thank you so much to our teams from OPZ who have been working on this for a very long time. But it will be coming back, not as many amendments as parole, but we'll have some more coming down the pike as well.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1. This amendment allows the planning and zoning officer to require a developer to design, construct, and dedicate roads identified as planned in the Odenton Town Center Master Plan as a condition of approval of a development application, and requires developers to improve and dedicate county roads under certain conditions.
Mr. Hunt, this is your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that sums it up quite nicely. We have staff here who can provide further clarification if anyone needs it.
Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 1? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Volkey.
I just have a question. When you talk about dedicating roads, are we talking about like dedicating something to Mr. Prusky or somebody from West County? Like, what is that what we're talking about?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not
All right.
my
I want to be
bill.
clear.
Is that a rhetorical question? Or, oh, okay. Because I don't see anybody going to answer it.
And Mr. Prusky's not here. Prusky knows. Prusky Drive. Prusky Drive.
Are there any other questions at this time on amendment number 1? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler. Aye. Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been adopted.
Okay. That was 85. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 86-23.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think should we say that Bill 8423 as amended is going to come back on December 18th?
My apologies.
Okay, that's what I'm here
It's not
for.
in my script. Yes, I skipped ahead. My apologies. Bill number 84-23 will be back on December 18th as amended. It'll have another public hearing. Madam Secretary, please read Bill number 8523.
Bill number 8523, an emergency ordinance concerning zoning, general provisions, uses, and structures, temporary uses.
This is an administration amendment. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor. Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table, I have Lynn Miller from the Office of Planning and Zoning and Lori Blair Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. As you all know, we discussed this bill at the work session. This bill was intended to remove the sunset on the termination of outdoor dining in the county for those establishments that had made use of those provisions. We believe this bill was the most simple and straightforward fix, and we had not received any complaints in the executive office about outdoor dining. I understand since then that you have all heard from some residents in the county regarding certain establishments, and that there's an amendment to address that. So we will address that at the appropriate time, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Is there any discussion at this time before I open the public hearing? Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the appropriate time, we will bring the amendment as Mr. Hunt teed up. But I do just want to give a little bit of background on this bill so that everybody's clear. I know some of my colleagues on the council remember living through this as we did it a few years ago. So obviously this initially stemmed out of provisions that were put in place by the county executive during COVID when indoor dining was problematic and people were having to dine outdoors. That was the original impetus for this bill. We then got to a point where it looked like we would be removing those sort of temporary additional seating provisions that we had put in place, and the county executive and those of us on the council worked together to extend to a degree through Bill 5521 those outdoor dining provisions, because at that time, if I recall, we were somewhere in the middle of 2021, and there was still a concern about COVID and people eating indoors and the concerns with that. Then we got to earlier this year, and again, it looked like those COVID restrictions were going to expire. We'd heard from businesses that they were still helpful and that they appreciated that. We were not hearing major concerns from the community about the extension of this, and so the council went ahead and passed it. Now here we are, and as I had asked you at the work session, this makes the temporary permanent. After that, we did get quite a bit of testimony, specifically from residents in my district, who had concerns about extending this on a permanent basis. So as a result, I spoke with the administration, and Ms. Pickard had some similar concerns, and I know others on the council did. So the intention is that when we get to the right moment, we will be putting sort of another Band-Aid on the situation to kick this out a little further. And then the administration is committed to me that they will work to get some answers to some of the questions and concerns that have been raised by the community, specifically with respect to the interplay and enforcement of liquor license laws, restrictions through the liquor board, as well as some inspections and permits issues on what these outdoor structures can be. So I just want to put that on the record so everybody understands the background and the history that's been done, as well as what we're doing now and why it is that we're intending to extend this another 6 months, because I think, quite frankly, saying to some of these businesses they have to undo these things right now, right before the holiday, just doesn't make sense in this moment. So that is why a 6-month extension would be the plan. But I also want to make make sure that the community understands what the plan is going forward. It is not kick it down the road, hope you all go away, kind of put it on the back shelf and then bring it up and then make it permanent. The idea is you all have actually raised concerns to us we didn't know about before, and so now we want to address those concerns. So I just want to put that out there. I know there are some folks who are going to testify on this, and I look forward to hearing from them. That information first. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 85-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the council, we did. There were 18 submissions. Everyone here received emails. There is a summary posted online, and they will all be added to the record.
We'll now hear from individuals who signed up ahead of time. Ms. Taylor, I believe, Catherine Taylor is here. She has signed up. Is there anyone in addition to Ms. Taylor who wants to testify at this time? Okay, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record. And I want to remind everybody they have 2 minutes. Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
Hello, my name is Catherine Viewig Taylor, and I'm from Pasadena. I oppose the bill and believe these emergency COVID outdoor seating orders should not be extended. No reasonable person would object to the outdoor seating order back in 2020 when indoor seating was prohibited. However, it has been years since indoor seating has returned. My greatest objection to this bill is the inclusion of residential neighborhoods in this order. There are grandfathered restaurants and bars in residential neighborhoods throughout the county. The COVID outdoor seating order have caused increased noise, traffic, and parking issues for these residents in residential communities by increasing the seating capacity. The county zoning code restricts grandfathered bars and restaurants to a total 30% expansion of the area. That is, in my opinion, already wrongly burdening the residents of those neighborhoods and prioritizing commercial interests over the residents' interests. And the COVID outdoor 50% expansion makes a bad situation worse. Last January, the Liquor Board ceased authorizing outdoor liquor licenses for outdoor seating that was put in place due to the COVID outdoor seating provisions. The Liquor Board is still playing catch-up. My written testimony contains an email from the Liquor Board to the licensees acknowledging that outdoor seating alterations have not been provided to the Liquor Board as required, provides a new, more detailed form to use, and refers to this new form as the new baseline moving forward. What is missing from the Liquor Board email is that the Liquor Board will verify that the licenses have zoning approval. There is a grandfathered bar in my neighborhood who was issued an outdoor alcohol license before COVID, although there was no zoning approval. The bar was not eligible for zoning approval because they had already received the maximum 30% expansion in area. The Liquor Board did not check with the zoning.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out. Ma'am.
Yes, hi. I oppose the extension of the outdoor seating I just feel like any kind of expansion without permitting process. I have a home. I can't expand on my home without going through the regulatory process. And just to give these restaurants an opportunity to expand without regard of the facilities and in my neighborhood in particular, we're serviced by private well and septic. And this type of expansion, it burdens me. I have to worry about what's going on over there and whether it's safe. There's a health issue. And just to give a blanket approval to all of these seems unfair to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Bill 85-23 before I close the public hearing? Seeing no movement, the public hearing on Bill number 85-23 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 85-23.
Bill number 8523, an emergency ordinance concerning zoning, general provisions, uses and structures, temporary uses.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1. This amendment revises Bill number 8523 to extend the termination date by which outdoor dining areas as a temporary use under Bill number 5521 must be removed unless the restaurant obtains the necessary authorizations and permits required to keep outdoor dining areas in place.
Thank you. This is sponsored by Mr. Volke and myself. Mr. Volke, you have the floor. Is there a second?
Ledbetter, second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Volke?
Thank you. So we explained it. We've explained what it is. This will kick it out to June the 10th, 2024. Okay, thanks.
Would the administration like to respond about the amendment number 1?
I would just respond with that. We are already working to take a look at this and figure out a way forward. So June 10th is workable for the administration.
Is there any further discussion on amendment number 1? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Volke?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill amendment number 1 has been adopted.
Thank you. Bill number 8523 will be heard again on December 18th, 2023.
Madam Chair. It's an emergency ordinance. I believe we can vote on it tonight. That's correct?
Oh,
Emergency
my
ordinances can be amended, voted on.
Mm-hmm. Madam Secretary, would you want to call the roll on, you want to read it back in and call the roll?
If you feel like it would help, I will happily read that title again. Bill number 8523, an emergency ordinance concerning zoning, general provisions, uses and structures, temporary uses.
Please call the roll on bill number 85-23 as amended.
Mr. Volke?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler? Aye. Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 8523 has been passed.
Well done. Madam Secretary, please read bill number 8623.
Bill number 8623, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, zoning, development requirements for particular types of development, and redevelopment.
This is the administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table are Kaylee Schultz from the administration, Lynn Miller from the Office of Planning and Zoning, Lori Blair Klossmeyer from the Office of Law, and Eric Michelson, our Environmental Policy Director. We did discuss this bill at the work session. We do have a brief slideshow that we promise will be very brief, very brief. But just to give a little overview, so this bill establishes redevelopment requirements applicable to critical economic, critical corridor, town center, and transit-oriented overlay policy areas, which are designated in the Plan 2040 General Development Plan, as well as commercial revitalization areas if elected by a developer. It also supersedes existing development requirements, except specified critical area and Glen Burnie Sustainable Community Overlay Area provisions. It defines redevelopment as a substantial improvement of an existing structure or new construction on a lot or on contiguous lots, provided certain conditions are met, and outlines redevelopment application requirements and procedures. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Schultz and Ms. Miller to give a brief presentation.
Good evening again, Kaylee Schultz from the County Executive's Office. We will be brief, but if the public would just like to follow along on the screen, we are just going to hit some highlights and objectives of Bill 8623. So Bill 8623 encourages reuse and improvements to older, vacant, and underutilized commercial properties to create additional opportunities for better housing choices, better access to goods and services, and employment opportunities. It also will emphasize the conservation of our natural resources while promoting smart and equitable growth. Lynn will touch on this, but Bill number 8623 facilitates and incentivizes redevelopment by providing flexibility and streamlining of our development approval process and offers financial incentives by reducing development application fees. Like Mr. Hunt mentioned, this bill links to the objectives of Plan 2040 and will incentivize redevelopment in the targeted growth areas, and the policy areas are listed on the screen.
Okay, moving on to the next slide. The bill starts off with some definitions, as I believe Mr. Hunt already mentioned this, but it has a definition of redevelopment that's unique to this specific subtitle that would be added to Article 17. It does apply to either improvements to existing structures if they meet the definition of substantial improvements, and it also applies to new construction on a lot with pre-existing improvements that meet the criteria of having at least 40% impervious area, and that is put in place to mirror the definition of redevelopment that is applied for the purposes of stormwater management. And it also has its own unique definition of total site area, which subtracts any natural features, so that it makes the calculation of impervious area a little more similar to how we would normally calculate net area, which subtracts natural features. Moving on to the next slide, it does streamline the development review process a bit to try to help applicants, and it does that by requiring only one application phase. So in other words, the applicant can go directly to final plan or site development plan without going through the sketch plan or preliminary plan phase 1 of the development process. There is still a requirement for a pre-application meeting with planning and zoning and inspections and permits. So moving on. It also, in order to try to help streamline the development review process, it simplifies the criteria that are in the code for modifications. There still would be a modification process, but it removes the requirement that the developer has to demonstrate practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. And it also allows that modifications to Article 18 criteria or relief from certain Article 18 criteria could be granted through a modification process as opposed to a variance process. So that, I think, would be seen by most developers as a more streamlined way and also a little less expensive way by not having to go through the hearing officer to get a variance. However, that would not apply within the critical area, and it wouldn't apply to uses within zoning categories. You could not seek a modification to develop with a use that's not allowed in the underlying zoning district. It also allows for for the applicant to offer some alternative proposals to meet the code's open space and rec area and landscape requirements without having to go through a modification. So the planning and zoning officer would have the ability to review and evaluate alternative proposals that meet those core objectives and to approve them without the applicant needing to go through the mod process. And as usual, OPZ can require conditions in relation to approval of a mod. So next slide. Again, trying to streamline development and facilitate redevelopment. It offers an alternate to the road APF test by allowing the test to pass if they stay under 250 new vehicle trips generated. That's compared to the 50 trips that's currently required in the code now. And it also allows for an alternate school APF test, which might look familiar to you all because we've used these criteria for school APF both in the parole and in the Glen Burnie overlay. So we would also apply that here for redevelopment projects that meet the specific criteria of this subtitle. And then last slide, I believe, it also allows some flexibility in terms of developing residential uses in the commercial zoning districts. That is currently allowed in 3 of the 4 commercial districts now as a conditional use requirement, but it has some density limitations, and it also includes some requirements for a certain percentage of commercial floor area to be included. So what this bill would do, again, specifically just for redevelopment projects that are redeveloping under this subtitle, it would allow that density in the commercial zoning districts to go up to 22 units per acre, and it would essentially drop the requirement for a commercial floor area component. So again, all of that is with the idea of trying to facilitate redevelopment, particularly of some of our older vacant or underutilized commercial properties around the county. And again, the bill does apply only within specific GDP policy areas, which is in line with the policy goals and directives in Plan 2040. So that's critical economic, critical corridor, TOD policy areas. And I believe that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Oh, Mr. Volkey.
Lots, thank you. Can you put up, either Ms. Corby or the panel, I don't know who has access to this, the development policy areas from Plan 2040 slide that was put in the folder? It's complicated order. Sorry. If you can't do it, then
She's got it.
Okay. You got it. Okay, so if I'm looking at this map, everything that is light green, everything that is yellow, everything that's dark green, this would not apply in those areas, right? It would apply around BWI and Fort Meade in the dark purple, which is the critical economic areas, as well as at the top of my district over there where Brandon Shores is and Kembo Drive, there on the outskirts of Baltimore City. It would apply to a number of places going down Route 2 that's in sort of this maroonish color that's kind of light, going from Brooklyn Park down, a little bit of Glen Burnie, a little bit kind of in the middle of the county there, and then moving along the Route 3 corridor. Am I understanding that correctly, where all this would apply?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Now, it does not apply in the village centers, right? So it's not going to apply outside of Parole down there. It's not going to apply in my corridor over by Stony Creek, which is up there just above the dark green and below the purple on the east side of the county. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
I think that there is some transit-oriented development overlay in, at least in the Parole Town Center.
Yes.
It's not working on it. Mr. Smith has a pointer, but we're gonna skip that for now. Yeah.
So Odenton has it too, the TOD.
Yeah, the TOD. Okay, but it does apply to the TOD, but it doesn't apply to the village centers, right? So it
That's
depends
right.
the cross hatching or the sort of up and down on there. Are you able, Ms. Corby, to pull up the redevelopment matrix that was provided? Is it working? Well, you give more presentations than I do, so you're better at it.
Mr. Volkey, you do have a question coming?
At some point.
Okay. Let's make sure we have a question about Bill 8623.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can you go to the very last page, the very bottom? Okay, so in any of those areas in the county, if I'm following this bill correctly, and I had asked this at the work session, and I'm still kind of stuck on this, which is why I'm coming back to it. C1, C2, C3, or C4 zoned properties in any of those swaths of the county that we just showed could now, if they were doing the redevelopment using the parameters in this bill, they could go to 0% commercial use, 100% residential use with up to 22 units per acre. Is that right?
That's correct.
Across the board. So, and then with that, the school capacity test doesn't apply if at least 50% of the units are single or efficiency. So you could have 51% being single and efficiency, 49% being 2 bedrooms, and there would be no school capacity test, right?
And as long as there are no units with more than 2 bedrooms.
Correct, right. So 2's the max, but you could do 51% singles and efficiencies, and you could do 49% just 2 bedrooms, and that would allow you to exempt out a school APF, put 22 units per acre in any of those places in the county that we just showed on the map.
It would allow you to pass the school APF test.
Fair. That's a fair way to put it. Okay. Now, I did not see in this matrix that you all included the school APF, sort of the where we are now and where we are under this bill. Was there a reason that didn't go into the redevelopment matrix? Because I saw traffic was in there, water and sewer, some of the other provisions were all kind of laid out, but I didn't see school APF. Was that, did I miss it, or was that not in there? This is in your matrix, not in the bill itself.
Okay, I don't have the matrix in front of me, but if it's
okay.
not listed in there, it wasn't omitted for any intentional reason. It just wasn't in there.
Okay. Can I ask another question? I did ask one. Actually, I asked like 3.
Please ask a question.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
With the traffic APF, so walk me through exactly how that is going to work, because it seems like if you met traffic APF for a prior use, but you've been vacant for a period, we're now going to give you a baseline use on what you were, even though you've been vacant, and then we're going to just count the additional traffic on top of that. Am I understanding it right? And if I'm explaining it poorly, you can feel free to do it how you think should be done. It just seems like we're giving a baseline on a vacant property where we're not currently seeing cars moving in and out, but you're giving credit to that when we're counting the traffic, which causes me some real concerns about what that means. Because if the area has been vacant and other people have built up and developed, and that's not part of the traffic count, but then we're giving that baseline on somebody new coming in, it doesn't seem like you're fully mitigating for what you're doing. So if I'm missing that, correct me.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, let me just get to the language in the matrix.
It's in the bottom of your matrix there on the screen, but yeah.
Right, so it's allowing you to use the traffic generated from a previous use, if the property is not in use now, as your baseline, but it also allows that, or actually requires that the applicant is going to have to provide supporting information to demonstrate and justify why that former traffic generation would still be applicable for the proposed use.
Which they would provide to the Office of Planning and Zoning.
I'm sorry?
They would provide that to Planning and Zoning?
That's right.
Okay. All right. I have more questions, but I'm happy to let somebody else go if they have more.
Does anyone else have a question? Ms. Fiedler.
Just one right now. So for the modifications, there does not have to be proof of an undue hardship, but there does have to be for an exemption to the landscape manual?
There's no exemption to the landscape manual, but it allows that a developer can bring a landscape plan, a proposed landscape plan that doesn't exactly meet the requirements of the landscape manual, and it can be approved without a modification process. So in other words, it gives more discretion to the Office of Planning and Zoning to determine whether the landscape that's proposed with that particular project is adequate and sufficient to meet the purposes of landscaping.
I may have a follow-up question in a moment, but thank you.
I'm going to chime in here for a minute and go back to the traffic APF. It's my understanding that if the property is currently vacant, let's go with a fast food restaurant on a corner, when they go to redevelop that property, they are going to take into account the traffic counts that were associated with the first development of a fast food restaurant, and they're going to start there as a baseline because they most likely mitigated already in the area, in the commercial area, for any sort of traffic impact. And then they're going to go from there. If they're increasing the trips, is that?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So following up on that same thought process, right? So you got a vacant Checkers, let's say, for instance, and let's say they did a traffic count, and I'm going to make up numbers. Let's say the traffic count was 200, trips or something, daily trips, which is probably too low, but let's go with it. So the Checkers goes out of business and it sits there for like 8 years. Now all of a sudden somebody comes in, and in those intervening 8 years that it's been vacant, other things have been built up around. So Checkers, back when they went in originally, mitigated for what they were doing, but there's been a ton of buildup around there. Other properties have come in, et cetera. When Checkers property now turns into 22 units per acre in terms of a development, Checkers is going to get spotted the first 200. We're going to say, well, you already fixed your problem. So then if they say, well, our total trip generation is 400, they're only going to have to mitigate for the other 200 because we're spotting them 200 on the bottom. Am I understanding that right?
I believe so, Mr.
That's what I thought. And so the challenge I have with that, and this is what I am trying to understand from the administration, how that serves good policy, is that all this other stuff has happened around them because nothing sits static. And so all the other people have changed the landscape too. So when this developer comes in and they say, well, I'm kind of starting at this baseline of already getting this many traffic trips that are counted, and I only have to mitigate for these extra ones up here, how does that serve the people who are in that community having to deal with that traffic from that new development? That's what I'm struggling to understand with this. I get how it's good policy for the developers. I get how it's cheaper for them, but I'm not sure how that serves the policy of everybody who's there. So that's where if you can help me understand that, that would help me.
I don't know if this is exactly going to answer your question, but what we were trying to do is make a policy decision because Checkers typically would probably have people going in and out day in and day out multiple times a day, where if you make residential units, it would typically be more few in the morning, more in the evening, and that would be the traffic. So it was just in a way to kind of see if there was a balance. What we found in like the few little scenarios that we put together is that the trips amount to pretty much the same. So that's why we gave it this baseline, and this is why we came up with this policy, as what we hope that the standard would be, and then be able to add, more trips as the developer sees fit, depending on the units that are built. Also, I don't see a Checkers needing 1 acre, but that's just me.
Chick-fil-A needs an acre. I got another question, but
we still have to have the public hearing.
Whatever you want to do. I can wait until after.
Okay. We're going to open the public hearing on Bill number 86-23. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
I don't see that we have anybody. Oh, we do have people signed up to speak. They can come to the table. And anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on 86-23. I want to remind everybody you have to state your name and address for the record. Your remarks are limited to 2 minutes. And if you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. Dr. Bonner, I believe you are first.
Thank you. Good evening. Linda Hannafin Bonner, 2648 Quietwater Cove, Annapolis. I represent ACT and the co-chair of the Housing Committee. Council members, overall, we believe that the intent of Bill 8623, with its purpose to provide contiguous lots with potential for multifamily dwellings is quite commendable. However, we will like to note the omission of allowable zoning categories may inhibit its effectiveness. In other words, unlike the workforce housing bill, this proposed bill does not name the mixed-use zoning category in which the multifamily units can be produced, nor does the bill define any multifamily units that are designated as affordable units. We believe this needs to be included. We think the workforce housing model offers, the workforce housing policy offers a good model to follow. But we're also curious as to how this legislation integrates with the other legislation for affordable housing, such as the essential worker housing, the workforce housing, and between the two. We did a quick analysis, and one of the things that we found that while the workforce housing legislation defines rental and owner income level, this bill lacks similar wording or requirements for affordable units. So we would like to see that there be some cohesiveness between these three bills to ensure that we have affordable housing and that it becomes an integral part of the county's housing policy, not just leapfrogging. A quirk of mine is that with respect to the community involvement, the bill currently states that the applicant will hold a community meeting after the pre-application process is completed. We'd like to suggest that this be changed, and that when the concept plan is approved, that the developer then go out for a community meeting. And I'll submit this in writing.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston, I believe you are next.
Well, thank you, Chair. It's great to see you back in that seat. And thank you, members of the council. Matt Johnston, for the record, 1639 Chesapeake Lane, Edgewater, Maryland, here on behalf of the over 3,500 supporters of Arundel Rivers Federation, a 501c3 located right in Edgewater, Maryland, that protects and preserves the South, the West, and the road rivers, and fights for clean water all over our county. So that's what I'm here to talk about tonight, not the traffic, not the APF, but actually the environmental perspective. It's rare that you're going to hear an environmental advocate up here saying that this is a good development bill, but from an environmental perspective, this is a pretty good development bill. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. But we think there are a couple of ways to make it better. The best policy for water quality in terms of land use is protecting our existing forests. The second best policy is putting impervious surfaces back where there are already impervious surfaces. When you do that, we don't add sediment pollution. We don't add nutrient pollution. We keep it steady so that all the tax dollars can go further whenever we're paying for restoration. That's what we'd like to incentivize with all the incentives in this bill. Not just redevelopment, but the right kind of redevelopment. So I sent an email to all of you earlier today with a couple of recommended amendments that we think make this a good bill for the environment as well. And those amendments, what they will do is, one, they will change the definition of redevelopment. Currently, the definition says a minimum of 40% impervious surface, but it is silent on how much new impervious surface can be added. If this is going to be good redevelopment for the environment, we think there should be no additional impervious surface if all of these incentives are handed out. And then the second thing is we have an opportunity whenever we redevelop these sites to fix the sins of the past. So we ask that we require the removal of impervious surfaces on natural features to the maximum extent practicable, similar to what we do in the critical area. Thank you. I think I got in there under 2.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Minahan, you're next.
Thank you. Matt Minahan, 3651 First Avenue, Edgewater, Maryland. A second Matt on the same topic, and that is improving the reduction of impervious surfaces when we do redevelopment here, is the first point. Second point is the bill as currently written requires a community meeting to occur only after the plan has been submitted and is being reviewed by OPZ. We believe, like all community meetings and other development projects, these community meetings need to precede the submission to OPZ, and that the submission to OPZ should include comments from the community as part of the record when OPZ is reviewing the application. So we would request an amendment to move the community meeting back to the beginning of the process, not to the middle of the process. Our other concern here is around the authorities granted to the planning and zoning officer. There's an enormous amount of discretion, unlimited discretion in many ways, to use ambiguous and vague criteria here to make decisions that are unspecified. And we have a great respect for the current planning and zoning officer. However, there's an election every 4 years, and who knows who will be in those chairs in the future. We would encourage you to put some limits, please, on the amount of discretion allowed to the planning and zoning officer. This bill is too broad, gives them too much power. And the last thing I'll point out is that on forests, we would just encourage a stronger language to preserve tree covers and forested areas in the redeveloped areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins.
Pasadena Woodhome Circle. You know, I come down here tonight, I didn't plan on even testifying. A terrible thing to do on a slow night, come to the county council meeting, right? But I've sat here tonight and I've digested a lot of discussion on zoning. And when I was the chair of the Marley Neck Small Area Plan Committee, I rode the bus up and down Marley Neck Road. There was no Tanya Springs. We went down where the racetrack was going to go. We went where Under Armour was, down in that area. And immediately what went through my mind was where Mr. Volke went when he asked to see the chart. I was sitting back there thinking, where does all this redevelopment happen, right? And we kind of saw what the map said. But I'm not against the redevelopment, but when I was on the committee, the big buzzword was mixed use. And if we take all this area, this commercial area, this industrial area, and we populate it, we're going to turn our roads into a nightmare. You guys were already going down that rabbit hole on the traffic. So, and as the person to my left that testified, this needs to be coordinated. It can't be done in a vacuum. We heard of planning and zoning just having the power to snatch this parcel and make a decision. If it doesn't fit how the area is going to be used, we shouldn't be doing it because it drives us right into other situations. I mean, some we dealt with earlier today, okay? So I can't support this as it's written. I'm not against it. I'm not against the workforce housing. Okay, maybe that's a good way to blend it in, but the key word there is blend. We can't continue to do these things in a vacuum. I heard Checkers, and I live right around the corner from a Checkers, and there's a Long Hill Road, and
Thank you, sir.
We got a nightmare. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Y'all are dismissed. Is there anyone else here prepared to testify on Bill 8623 at this time? Seeing no movement, I'm going to close the public hearing on Bill number 86-23. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 8623.
Bill number 8623, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development zoning, development requirements for particular types of development, redevelopment.
We do have two amendments prepared tonight. I will give Mr. Volke an opportunity to ask his questions if he has remaining questions before we proceed with amendments.
Thank
you
you.
have the floor, sir.
Much appreciated. So I'm going to touch on something that was just hit on by one of the speakers. I don't remember exactly who it was, but the idea of vesting an awful lot of power in the planning and zoning officer. So one of the things that this bill looks like it does is takes variances and makes some modifications. If I understand, going to a variance hearing is a public hearing where the hearing officer conducts business out in the public. People can hear what the hearing officer is asking. They can hear what's being presented. They can put in their own testimony in certain situations. But doing a modification, I don't think there's that public input. Am I understanding that process correctly? How would you, maybe I ask it this way. How would you get public input on a modification vis-a-vis a variance?
You would still be able to get public input through the community meeting requirement, but no, there would be no hearing before the administrative hearing officer.
Okay, so I go to those community meetings and sit in on them from time to time. I can't promise I go to all of them, but typically the way they proceed is like this. The developer gets on, the developer puts up some plan of what they want to do. They talk about how great it is. The community, they'll mention something about we may need a modification for X, Y, or Z, whatever. They usually are not terribly specific about what they have to get for a modification. And then the community says, we don't like all these different things, and they all smile, and they look into the camera, because they're still by Zoom, a lot of them, and they say, we hear, and these are all recorded, and we'll present all these to the Office of Planning and Zoning. And then the development moves forward, and the modifications are granted, and nobody in the community is happy because it all moves forward, and their concerns weren't, in their opinion, addressed. So how do we do that better?
Well, Mr. Volke, the requirements in the code have to be demonstrated by the applicant.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then the Office of Planning and Zoning typically will approve the modification if those requirements have been met. Or they will, discuss alternative ideas with the applicant and see if we can reach some agreement.
But that's all done kind of behind closed doors. That's not done publicly, right?
It's done as part of meetings with the applicant and planning and zoning.
So how is it that, again, we feel that taking what's currently a variance process done in the public and moving it to a modification process that's done behind closed doors or without the public being involved, again, how do we see that as better for the public? I get why it's better for the developers. I get why it's cheaper. I get they don't have to pay lawyers, go to the hearings, et cetera, and I understand that. How is it better for the public?
Well, the objective of the bill, again, is to try to facilitate redevelopment and to remove some of the obstacles that are making it difficult to redevelopment. So that's the primary objective.
Okay.
If I may interject here, as we all passed Bill 6820 regarding redevelopment in the Glen Burnie Sustainable Community, which was a very exciting bill to pass. And, as we talk about redevelopment, I would just like to sort of educate my colleagues a little bit. We've seen 3 small projects come through that bill, and it's been 3 years. Redevelopment is extremely difficult. The 3 projects to come through the Glen Burnie Sustainable Overlay, which is similar but different than this bill, has not seen any redevelopment with a residential component. It has seen parcels that were developed many, 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 many years ago now have modern stormwater and attention to the environment, which is a big win. We have a lot of old commercial corridors, and this bill is meant to bring investment to those corridors. It's extremely important in my district and in the outskirts of my district. As we drive up and down, I was super excited about passing 6820, but I'm still driving through the same Glen Burnie 3 years later. It takes a lot of time and a lot of investment to do a redevelopment project. It's not simple. So being able to parse through the barriers we have in the process is vital. I'm happy to spend more time with you, Mr. Volke, but I'll let you ask your next question.
Thank you. Ms. Fiedler, do you want to go first?
You can finish.
Okay, thanks. So one of the things that I've heard on other bills that have been county council member introduced from members of the public has been no more Article 18 amendments. Don't do spot amendments, right? Don't come in with this kind of stuff. Do it through comp rezoning. So I guess my question to the admin would be this. Why is this being done as an Article 18 amendment as opposed to simply rezoning the properties that you feel are these blighted commercial properties that need some help and need to be incentivized to redevelop? Why are you doing this as a code rewrite where you're kind of putting this in, and quite frankly, if the average person pulls up the map, they would look at the property like Marley Station Mall, for instance, which is C3, all of that, and they would go, hey, this is a commercial property. They wouldn't realize that if you dig into Article 18, you can find that Marley Station Mall probably could use this as a way to now do R22 development because they are sitting in a commercial zone in a critical economic corridor. And so they would be somebody that would be able to utilize this. So I guess that's my question. Why are you doing it this way as opposed to overtly coming out and putting it in the plan so that anybody could see this is actually R22?
Yeah, I think this is probably a question for Ms. Miller, but I'll respond to it too. Having sat in on a couple of the regional committees actually up in Glen Burnie over the course of the past couple of weeks or so, and the issue of Marley Station Mall, for instance, came up. I think one of the reasons in terms of having the Article 18 language in this legislation is to allow for flexibility. It's not to require essentially that these properties go to R22, but one of the things that's being said a lot in conversations in terms of folks who would otherwise be developing these properties and why they aren't getting developed is because there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty to buy a property that's laid fallow for a long time or otherwise hasn't been developed in terms of what is the market going to warrant. And to your question about variances versus modifications, I think the uncertainty about a process that might be litigated sort of for an extremely long time and have money that's hanging out there. So I think in terms of the way the bill was drafted, it was based on trying to listen to the people who would be responsible for driving this redevelopment activity, figuring out what the pain points were, and then allowing some flexibility within these corridors that are already intensively developed and where the infrastructure exists. So I think, maybe that answers a couple of your different questions. Maybe it doesn't, but Ms. Miller, if you've got any additions.
No, not right now. I think that answers the question.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at the map that we had up earlier, the vast majority of the 5th District is under the neighborhood preservation policy area. But I can think of a handful of properties in the 5th District that still face challenges on the smaller scale of redevelopment. Can you speak to considering redevelopment opportunities on a smaller scale across the county? Because I think that large scale, small scale, we have always heard how challenging it is to redevelop, but the smaller scale redevelopment is not included in the bill.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in on this one as well. I think, one of the issues in terms of the constraints, in terms of the land use areas, was that especially the Article 18 changes are pretty dramatic and allow for quite a bit of flexibility. So I don't think many of us were comfortable essentially having that be applied broadly across the county. That said, there's a recognition that there are these sort of infill parcels, maybe within neighborhood preservation areas or in peninsula land use areas that should be addressed. And my own position is that they're, pursuing legislation to address those sort of more isolated cases has a lot of merit, makes sense. I just don't know that within the scope of this bill that it's possible to do all of those kinds of things and address those individual instances that are outside of the areas where this more intensive development is likely to be focused.
I really appreciate that, and that's what I thought the answer would be, but just hearing from some constituents who have either noticed or are involved in some of those smaller properties that are interested in future redevelopment, I wanted to make sure we had that on the record, so thank you.
I'm happy to work with my colleague from the 5th District on that exact issue, whether we could figure out a path forward within the construct of this bill or come up with a subsequent bill. I'd be happy to join forces. Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The traffic impacts is one of my biggest concerns when it comes to this legislation. The two areas that are targeted within my district are the Edgewater area along Route 2 and then the east side of Route 3. I don't know that anyone who lives in the Crofton-Odenton area really cares which district number is in their address. They just care about what traffic is like on Route 3. And so I do hear about traffic concerns quite frequently from constituents. I would really love, I've spoken to Mr. Barron. I know he's got a lot on his plate right now, but I have spoken to him about, I would love to see the data. I know you have said that the traffic isn't going to be too different, but saying that and seeing the actual data, the studies that you used to make the decisions that were made for this bill would be incredibly helpful. Is that data available? Is the question. If not today, but.
If not today, we will get it to you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, we can go ahead with amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1. This amendment adds multifamily dwellings as a conditional use in a C4 commercial district only in the if the redevelopment project is in a certain policy area.
Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 1?
Radvian, so moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. This is an administration amendment. You have the floor, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As was explained, this adds multifamily as a conditional use in C4 only. This was intended to be in the original bill, so it's just correcting an oversight.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues? I like this amendment. I urge my colleagues to support. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Volkey. Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 2.
Amendment number 2. This amendment clarifies that the requirement that areas subject to preservation or conservation easements and natural features and their associated buffers must remain undisturbed to the maximum extent practicable.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. This is actually my amendment, and this amendment offers clarifying language as just described, that natural features must remain undisturbed to the maximum extent possible. This clarifying language for the redevelopment program, that it just aligns with everywhere else of the code, but it takes that language and puts it in the provision around redevelopment. Motion to adopt. Does the
Motion to adopt.
Is
I said second.
You need a second.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yes, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you sharing with this amendment with all of us ahead of time. We are comfortable with this amendment.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues at this time on amendment number 2? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 2.
Mr. Volkey.
No.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Amendment number 2 has been adopted.
Bill number 86-23 will be heard on, as amended, will be heard on December 18th, 2023. I think we're done. Is there any other business to be brought before the County Council at this time?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to ask to be recorded as an aye for Bill 8023. I was unable to vote earlier this evening.
May I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The County Council is adjourned until December 18th, 2023.